The silence before the storm. The Galactic Assembly Hall floated in the void between star systems, a monument to peace that had endured for 15,000 years. Its crystalline walls reflected the light of a dozen nearby suns, creating rainbows that danced across its surface like living things. Inside, beneath a dome that seemed to hold the universe itself, sat the representatives of 19 elder civilizations. Each species had mastered space travel before Earth had even cooled from its formation. Ambassador Sarah Chun walked through the massive entrance corridor with measured steps. She was 51 years old, with silver streaking through her black hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of countless diplomatic negotiations. Her gray suit was perfectly pressed, her posture straight but not rigid. Behind her walked 3 members of her team. Lieutenant James Morrison carried a data tablet, his young face carefully neutral. Dr. Amira Okafor, the xenobiology specialist, walked with quiet confidence. And bringing up the rear was Commander Ryan Torres, officially listed as a security attaché, though his role was far more complex than that simple title suggested. The assembly was already in session when they arrived. Sarah could hear the rumbling voices of the elder species echoing through the vast chamber. She paused at the entrance, taking a moment to center herself. 40 years. Humanity had been part of this galactic community for 40 years, and in all that time they had never raised their voice, never demanded, never threatened. Today might be different. The Galactic Assembly operated on protocols older than human civilization. The chamber was arranged in concentric circles, with the most ancient and powerful species occupying the inner rings. Humanity's delegation sat in the outer ring, along with 7 other young species who had joined the galactic community within the last million years. The Council considered this arrangement fair. After all, what were a few thousand years of waiting when measured against the age of stars? High Administrator Vellner of the Corvith Dominion noticed Sarah's arrival. His species resembled massive insects, with 6 limbs and compound eyes that could see across multiple spectrums of light. The Corvith had built their first interstellar empire 3 million years before humanity discovered fire. Vellner regarded humans with the same mild interest one might show toward a clever pet. Ambassador Chun. His voice came through the universal translator as a series of clicks and whistles transformed into words. You have requested speaking time. The assembly grants you 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Sarah's jaw tightened for just a moment before she smoothed her expression back into diplomatic neutrality. They had requested an emergency session. 8 million dead, and they were granted 3 minutes. She walked to the speaking platform at the center of the chamber. The platform rose from the floor, lifting her up so all could see. 19 pairs of alien eyes turned toward her. Some showed curiosity. Most showed indifference. A few showed barely concealed contempt. Honored members of the Galactic Assembly, Sarah began, her voice steady and clear. I come before you today to discuss a matter of grave urgency. 6 days ago, the Zithron Empire launched an unprovoked attack on our colony world of Terra Nova. In the third ring, the Zithron representative shifted his massive bulk. General Kraxus was a creature of scales and teeth, standing nearly 3 meters tall. His species had conquered 40 star systems through military force, and the assembly had done nothing to stop them. The Zithron paid their taxes, followed most of the major protocols, and generally kept their aggression pointed at younger species who could not effectively fight back. The human speaks of matters she does not understand, Kraxus said, his voice a deep growl. Terra Nova was established in disputed territory. We merely defended our sovereign claim. Sarah's hands gripped the edge of the platform. Terra Nova had existed for 73 years. 8 million people called it home. It had farms, universities, hospitals. Children were born there who had never seen Earth. And 6 days ago, your fleet reduced it to ash and glass. She activated the holographic projector built into the platform. Images filled the air above the assembly. Burning cities. Refugees fleeing across scorched landscapes. A school half destroyed with small bodies visible in the rubble. The assembly watched in silence. Some looked away. Most simply waited for the presentation to end. We have documentation of all communications with the Zithron government, Sarah continued. For 2 years, we attempted to negotiate. We offered to purchase the territorial claim. We offered joint governance. We offered to relocate our colony entirely if given adequate time. Every offer was ignored. And then, without warning, without declaration, they attacked. High Administrator Vellner made a sound that might have been a sigh. Ambassador Chun, the Assembly acknowledges the tragedy that has befallen your colony. However, territorial disputes among member species are common. The Zitharon claim does have historical precedent, dating back nearly 4,000 years. Our people had lived there for 73 years, Sarah said quietly. A brief time, Vellner responded. Surely you understand. Your species is young. You are still learning the complexities of galactic civilization. These matters often take centuries to resolve properly. Sarah looked around the chamber. She saw the faces of species who had watched younger civilizations rise and fall like waves on a shore. To them, humanity was a temporary phenomenon. Interesting, perhaps, but ultimately insignificant in the grand sweep of galactic history. We filed the proper forms, Sarah said. We followed every protocol. We did everything your laws required of us. And your compliance is noted, Vellner said. The Assembly will form a committee to investigate the incident. We expect to have preliminary findings within 18 months. Now your time has expired. Please return to your seat. Sarah stood at the platform for 3 heartbeats longer than she should have. The silence stretched. Then she bowed her head slightly and walked back to her seat. James Morrison watched her face as she sat down. He had worked with Ambassador Chun for 6 years, and he had never seen that particular expression before. It was not anger. It was not grief. It was something colder and more final than either. The Assembly moved on to other business. Trade regulations between the Forlac Consortium and the Thaleen Republic. Taxation disputes. A proposal to expand the neutral zones near the galactic core. Humanity sat in silence and listened. They took notes. They did not interrupt. They were, as always, the perfect junior members of the galactic community. After the session ended, Counselor Meth-Era approached Sarah in the corridor outside the chamber. The Sethari were an ancient race, their bodies covered in fine blue scales that shimmered like water in sunlight. Meth-Era had served on the Assembly for 300 years and had seen countless young species struggle with the harsh realities of galactic politics. Ambassador Chun, she said, her voice gentle, I wanted to express my personal sympathy for your loss. I know the Assembly's response seems cold, but you must understand. We operate on timescales that your species finds difficult to comprehend. Sarah looked at the Sethari counselor. How long did it take the Assembly to respond when the Forlac attacked your colony world of Setharan Minor? Methera's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of surprise. That was 11,000 years ago. How do you know of it? We study history, Sarah said simply. The Assembly mobilized a peacekeeping force within 48 hours. 3 Forlac fleets were destroyed. Their government was sanctioned for 2 centuries. The circumstances were different, Meth-Era said carefully. Because we are young, Sarah said. Because we do not matter yet. Because you are not yet strong enough to matter, Meth-Era corrected gently. Ambassador, this is the nature of the galaxy. Power determines policy. The Zitharon have 12,000 warships. Your entire fleet consists of perhaps 300 vessels, most of them exploratory or commercial. The Assembly must consider the practical realities of enforcement. Sarah nodded slowly. I understand. Thank you for your honesty, Counselor. Meth-Era studied the human woman carefully. There was something in her eyes that the Sethari had not seen before. Ambassador, I hope you will not do anything foolish. Your species has a future in this galaxy, but only if you learn patience. We have been patient for 40 years, Sarah said. 40 years is nothing, Meth-Era replied. Learn to think in centuries, not decades. That is how you survive among the elder species. Sarah smiled, and it was her usual diplomatic smile, warm and understanding. I will take your advice to heart, Counselor. Thank you. Meth-Era walked away feeling vaguely unsettled, though she could not have explained why. The human ambassador had been perfectly polite, perfectly proper. And yet something in that smile had felt wrong, like the calm before a storm. In their private quarters, Sarah's team gathered around a secure communication terminal. Commander Torres activated a jamming field that would prevent any surveillance, then pulled up a star chart. Red markers indicated the positions of Zithron military installations. Blue markers showed human assets. There were far more blue markers than any galactic database would have suggested. "The assembly will do nothing," Dr. Okafor said quietly. "We knew they would not, but I had hoped." "Hope is a luxury," Torres said. His voice was harder than usual, stripped of the diplomatic pleasantness he wore in public. "We planned for this possibility. We have been planning for it since first contact." Sarah sat down heavily in a chair. For the first time since the attack, she allowed her diplomatic mask to slip. Grief and fury warred across her face. 8 million people, James. Children. Families. We sent them to Terra Nova promising them safety, promising them a future among the stars. Morrison pulled up casualty reports on his tablet. His hands shook slightly as he scrolled through the names. The youngest victim was 2 days old. Her name was Emily Zhang, born in the new Shanghai medical complex. She died when the Zithron bombardment hit the hospital. Silence filled the room. Sarah closed her eyes and took 3 deep breaths. When she opened them again, the diplomat was back. But something else looked out from behind her eyes now. Something the galaxy had not seen from humanity before. "Commander Torres," she said quietly, "send the activation codes." Torres looked at her carefully. "Once we do this, there is no going back. The galaxy will see what we truly are. Everything we have built over 40 years, all the goodwill, all the careful diplomacy, it ends the moment those codes transmit." "I know," Sarah said. "The elder species will fear us," Dr. Okafor added. "Some may try to destroy us before we become a threat." "I know," Sarah repeated. Morrison spoke carefully. "Ambassador, I need to hear you say it clearly. No room for misunderstanding." Sarah stood and walked to the window. Outside, stars scattered across the darkness like diamonds on velvet. Somewhere out there, Terra Nova's sun still shone, but the world that had orbited it was dead. 8 million voices silenced, 8 million futures erased. And the galaxy had offered them 3 minutes of speaking time and a promise to form a committee. She turned to face her team. Her voice was steady, clear, and absolutely certain. "For 40 years, we have been the galaxy's students. We have been humble. We have been patient. We have smiled and bowed and accepted our place at the bottom of the hierarchy. We did this because we believed in the possibility of peace. We believed that if we proved ourselves worthy, if we followed their rules and earned their respect, we could build a future among the stars without bloodshed." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was colder. "Terra Nova has taught us that this belief was naive. The elder species do not respect patience. They do not respect humility. They respect only power. And so we will show them power." Torres pulled out a small encrypted communicator. "Say the words, Ambassador." Sarah Chen looked at each member of her team in turn. These people had served with her for years. They had believed in the peaceful path. They had all sacrificed to maintain humanity's image as a species that preferred talk to action. But that time was over. "Operation Revelation," she said clearly. "Authorization code. Chun Alpha 77 Omega. Execute immediately." Torres entered the codes. Far away, in the dark spaces between stars, receivers activated. Ships began to wake from long sleep. Crews opened sealed orders. Weapons systems initialized. Humanity had spent 40 years preparing for peace, but they had also prepared for this moment. They had prepared for the day when peace failed. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest trick had been convincing everyone that diplomatic smiles and patient negotiation were all they had to offer. The truth was far more complicated, and far more dangerous. Sarah looked out at the stars one more time. "Counselor Meth-Era told me to think in centuries," she said softly. "But the Zithron took only 6 hours to destroy Terra Nova. I think it is time we taught the galaxy that humans measure justice in days, not centuries. In the darkness between stars, 47 fleets began to move. The galaxy had 48 hours of peace remaining. Then everything would change. The reckoning. Fleet Admiral Marcus Webb had been waiting in dark space for 17 years. His flagship, the UHNS Defiance, floated in absolute silence 3 light-years from any inhabited system. Around him, scattered across a volume of space larger than most solar systems, 46 other warships maintained their vigil. They had no running lights. Their reactors operated at minimal power. Their crews cycled through suspended animation, with only skeleton shifts awake at any given time. Marcus was 68 years old. He had joined Earth's military when humanity still thought they were alone in the universe. He had been there for first contact. He had watched the elder species welcome humanity with condescending smiles and paternal advice. And he had been among the first to understand that the galaxy was not the peaceful federation of equals that Earth's diplomats had hoped to find. The communication came at 0347 hours. Ship time. Marcus was awake, as he always was when the activation window opened. He had trained himself to sleep in 4-hour blocks, time to ensure he would never miss the signal if it came. For 17 years, the signal had not come. He had begun to believe it never would. Then his communication officer's console lit up with priority encryption. "Admiral," Lieutenant Commander Jennifer Park said, her voice carefully controlled. "We have activation codes. Authorization Chun Alpha 77 Omega. Operation Revelation is green." Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. After 17 years of waiting, after 40 years of humanity bowing and scraping before species that considered them barely sentient, the moment had finally arrived. He had hoped it would not come. He had prepared as if it was inevitable. Both things had been true simultaneously. "Sound general quarters," he said quietly. "Wake all crews. Bring all ships to full combat readiness. I want status reports in 30 minutes. Throughout the dark fleet, alarms began to sound. Men and women emerged from suspended animation, their minds clearing as stimulants flooded their systems. They had all volunteered for this duty. They all knew what it meant. For 17 years, they had lived in shadows, training for a war they hoped would never come. Terra Nova had changed everything. Marcus pulled up the intelligence reports that had accompanied the activation codes. Images of burning cities filled his screens. Casualty estimates. Civilian deaths. Children. The Zitharon had not just attacked a colony. They had committed genocide. And the Galactic Assembly had offered humanity 3 minutes of speaking time. "All ships report ready for combat operations," Commander Park reported. "Fleet is at full power. All weapons systems online. Crews are..." "They are ready, sir." Marcus heard the slight tremor in her voice. Park was 32 years old. She had spent half her adult life aboard this ship, waiting in the dark. Now that the moment had come, the reality of it was overwhelming. "I know," Marcus said quietly. He stood and walked to the center of the bridge. Around him, 40 officers and crew members waited. They were the best humanity had. They had sacrificed years of their lives to maintain this secret vigil. Now it was time to show the galaxy what that sacrifice had been for. "Open fleet-wide channel," Marcus ordered. "Channel open, sir." Marcus took a breath. "This is Admiral Webb to all ships. 17 years ago, we took up positions in dark space with orders to wait. We were told that we were humanity's insurance policy, the option we hoped we would never need to exercise. Today, that has changed. 6 days ago, the Zitharon Empire destroyed our colony on Terra Nova. 8 million of our people are dead. The Galactic Assembly has refused to act. So we will act." He paused, looking at the faces on his bridge. Young faces, old faces, all of them marked by the same determination. "We are about to show the galaxy something it has never seen before. For 40 years, humanity has been the friendly species, the eager students, the ones who smile and apologize and accept their place at the bottom. That ends today. Today, the galaxy learns that we are not weak. We are not helpless. We have simply been waiting." He straightened his uniform jacket. In approximately 90 minutes, we will emerge from dark space in the Zithron home system. Intelligence estimates their defense network at 214 orbital platforms and approximately 800 warships. They will not expect us. They do not know we exist. They believe that humanity's fleet consists of 300 explorer vessels and cargo haulers. A grim smile crossed his face. They are about to receive an education. All ships prepare for jump. Target coordinates are locked. We jump in 60 minutes. Use the time to say whatever prayers you need to say. This is Admiral Webb. Out. The channel closed. Marcus returned to his command chair and pulled up tactical displays. His fleet consisted of 47 ships, each one built in secret over the past 40 years. They had been constructed in the dark spaces between stars, assembled by crews who understood that their work must never be discovered. They represented technology that humanity had developed but never revealed, capabilities that the galactic community did not know humans possessed. Each ship was approximately twice the size of a standard Zithron cruiser. They mounted weapons that humanity had designed by studying every military conflict in galactic history and asking a simple question. What wins? Not what looks impressive. Not what follows established doctrine. What actually wins battles? The answer had surprised Earth's military researchers. The elder species fought according to traditions millions of years old. They had ritualized warfare, turning it into something that was more performance than practical combat. They announced their attacks. They maneuvered for advantage. They engaged in the elaborate dance of fleet combat that had been refined over countless millennia. Humanity had studied this and decided to ignore all of it. Jump in 30 seconds. The navigation officer called out. Marcus gripped the arms of his chair. Around him, the crew fell silent. The ship's jump drive built up charge, reality beginning to bend around them. He thought about the people who had died on Terra Nova. He thought about Ambassador Chun standing before the assembly, begging for help that would never come. He thought about 40 years of swallowed pride and diplomatic smiles. Jump in 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7. The galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson about humanity. They were kind because they chose to be kind. They were patient because they chose to be patient. And when those choices were taken away, what remained was something far older and far more dangerous. 3, 2, 1. Jump. Reality twisted. The Defiance and her sister ships vanished from dark space and reappeared in an entirely different part of the galaxy. Emergency klaxons immediately began to sound on every Zithron vessel in the system. The Zithron home world of Kralex Prime hung in space before them, a massive planet orbiting a red giant star. Around it, orbital platforms bristled with weapons. Hundreds of warships patrolled in careful formations. The Zithron had one of the largest militaries in the galaxy, and they kept most of it close to home, a symbol of their power and a reminder to potential enemies. In the command center of Orbital Defense Station 7, Commander Threxus stared at his sensors in disbelief. 47 unknown contacts had just appeared without warning in the inner system. No jump signatures. No advance warning. Just suddenly there, in clear violation of every protocol for system entry. Identify those vessels, he barked at his sensor officer. Unknown configuration. Commander. Transmitting standard identification request. On the bridge of the Defiance, Marcus listened to the Zithron hails. Unknown vessels, you have entered Zithron's sovereign space without authorization. Identify yourselves immediately and power down your weapon systems. Marcus looked at Commander Park. Open a channel to all Zithron forces. Channel open, sir. Marcus spoke clearly and without emotion. This is Fleet Admiral Marcus Webb of the United Human Navy. We are here in response to your unprovoked attack on our colony world of Terra Nova. You killed 8 million of our people. You will now surrender your vessels and stand down your defensive systems. You have 3 minutes to comply. Silence filled the channel. Then, from the Zithron flagship, General Craxus himself responded. His voice dripped with contempt. Human, you are either insane or suicidal. You have 47 vessels. We have 800 warships and 200 orbital platforms. Your entire species' military could not defeat us. Stand down immediately or be destroyed. Marcus had expected this response. The Zithron thought in terms of numbers. More ships meant victory. It was how the galaxy had fought wars for millions of years. But numbers were only relevant if both sides were using comparable technology and tactics. You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds, Marcus said calmly. Craxus made a sound that might have been laughter. Open fire. Destroy them all. 800 Zithron warships turned toward the human fleet. 200 orbital platforms locked weapons. The firepower represented enough destructive capacity to sterilize a dozen worlds. The Zithron expected the humans to break formation, to scatter, to try to flee. The human fleet did none of these things. All ships, Marcus said, execute protocol shock and awe. Fire at will. What happened next would be studied by military historians for generations. The human ships did not maneuver for position. They did not attempt to match the Zithron formation. They simply opened fire with every weapon they possessed, all at once, in a perfectly coordinated strike. Humanity had spent 40 years studying galactic military doctrine. They had learned that most species used energy weapons that required charging time between shots. They had learned that shield technology prioritized defense against sustained fire rather than overwhelming alpha strikes. They had learned that traditional fleet tactics assumed battles would last hours or even days. The human fleet had been designed to win battles in minutes. Each human ship mounted 42 heavy mass drivers, weapons that accelerated solid projectiles to relativistic speeds. They fired tungsten rods weighing several tons each, moving at significant fractions of light speed. At those velocities, the projectiles hit with the force of nuclear weapons. And the human ships fired all of them simultaneously. 2,000 projectiles crossed the distance to the Zithron defensive positions in 4.7 seconds. The Zithron shields, designed to absorb and distribute energy weapon fire over time, were simply overwhelmed. It was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a fishing net. Orbital Defense Station 7 ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a massive structure housing 3,000 Zithron soldiers. The next moment, it was an expanding cloud of superheated gas and shrapnel. Stations 8, 9, and 10 followed within seconds. 12 Zithron warships simply vanished, their hulls punctured by projectiles moving too fast for their sensors to track. Reload time 30 seconds, the weapons officer reported. All systems nominal. No malfunctions. Marcus watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The Zithron formation was breaking apart, ships scattering in panic. They had expected a battle. What they got was an execution. Second salvo. Target their command ships. I want their leadership disabled. The human fleet fired again. More Zithron vessels died. The orbital platforms that survived the first wave were now attempting to return fire, but human ships moved with an agility that their size should have made impossible. Humanity had developed artificial gravity and inertial dampening far beyond what the galactic community believed possible. Their ships could perform maneuvers that would have turned any other species' crews into paste. On his flagship, General Craxus stared at his displays in horror. Half his defensive network was gone. Dozens of his ships were destroyed or crippled, and the humans had only fired twice. His tactical officer was shouting something about projectile velocities and shield penetration, but Craxus could barely hear him over the roar of blood in his ears. All ships, focus fire on their flagship, he roared. Concentrate everything on that one vessel. Bring it down. 300 Zithron ships turned their weapons toward the Defiance. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes filled space. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The Defiance's shields flared bright blue as they absorbed the incoming fire, and held. Human shield technology was not better than galactic standard. It was simply different. While elder species had developed shields that distributed incoming energy across their surface, humans had created layered systems that could momentarily concentrate all defensive power at the point of impact. It meant their shields could absorb incredible amounts of damage from a single direction, though it left them vulnerable to coordinated strikes from multiple angles. But the Zithron were not thinking about coordinated strikes. They were thinking about survival. Shields at 70%, the defensive officer reported. Holding steady. Third salvo, Marcus ordered. Target their flagship. The Defiance and 6 other human ships focused their fire on Craxus's command vessel. 84 projectiles struck within a 2-second window. The Zithron flagship's shields failed. Its hull ruptured. Atmosphere vented into space. The ship began to break apart, its spine shattered by impacts it had never been designed to withstand. General Craxus had just enough time to realize that humanity had been hiding not just military strength but an entirely different philosophy of warfare. Then his bridge lost integrity and he died along with 3,000 of his crew. Enemy flagship destroyed, Commander Park reported. Her voice was steady, but Marcus could see her hands shaking slightly. Status of enemy fleet? They are breaking formation. Multiple ships are attempting to jump out of system. Approximately 200 vessels remain combat effective. The rest are destroyed, disabled, or fleeing. Marcus pulled up a timeline. The battle had lasted exactly 11 minutes and 43 seconds. In less than 12 minutes, humanity had shattered what was considered one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. Open a channel to all remaining Zithron vessels. Channel open, Admiral. This is Admiral Webb. You have seen what we can do. Stand down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any ship that attempts to flee or fight will be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to comply. This time there was no defiant response. No threats or bluster. The Zithron ships began shutting down their weapons. One by one they transmitted surrender codes. The battle was over. In the Galactic Assembly Chamber, 19 elder species sat in absolute silence. They had been monitoring the Zithron system, expecting to watch the foolish humans be destroyed. Instead, they had watched 12 minutes of systematic devastation that had rewritten everything they thought they knew about warfare and about humanity. High Administrator Vellner's hands trembled as he pulled up casualty estimates. The Zithron had lost over 300 ships. 72 orbital platforms had been destroyed. Human casualties were listed as 0. Not minimal. 0. The humans had not lost a single ship. This is not possible, Counselor Meth-Era whispered. Their technology, their tactics, none of this was in any of our assessments. Because they never showed us, Vellner said slowly. For 40 years, they have been lying to us. Every ship we saw, every capability they demonstrated, it was all a carefully constructed facade. On the central display, the human fleet was now moving into orbit around Kralex Prime. Boarding parties were transferring to captured Zithron vessels. The humans were securing the system with the efficiency of a military that had planned for exactly this scenario. What do we do? One of the junior counselors asked. Before anyone could answer, a communication request came through. Ambassador Sarah Chun was requesting an emergency session. The assembly, still in shock, granted it immediately. Sarah entered the chamber alone this time. No aides, no security. Just one human woman walking to the center platform. She looked exactly as she had 6 days earlier. Same gray suit, same careful posture. But something fundamental had changed. The assembly could feel it. Honored members, Sarah began, and her voice carried none of the deference it had held before. I address you today not as a supplicant seeking your aid, but as the representative of a species that has just demonstrated its true capabilities. For 40 years, we have played the role you expected of us. The young species, the weak species, the ones who needed your guidance and protection. She paused and looked around the chamber, meeting eyes that had always looked down on her. That was a choice. It was never our reality. Every ship you ever saw, every technology we demonstrated, every capability we revealed was carefully calculated to present an image of a species that posed no threat. We did this because we believed in the possibility of peaceful coexistence. We wanted to join your community as equals, but we understood that revealing our full strength might frighten you, might lead to preemptive strikes against us before we could establish ourselves. Vellner found his voice. You deceived us. We protected ourselves, Sarah corrected. And we were right to do so. When the Zithron attacked Terra Nova and killed 8 million of our people, This assembly offered us 3 minutes of speaking time and a committee that would report back in 18 months. You proved that the galactic community does not protect the weak. It merely tolerates them until they become inconvenient. She pulled up holographic displays showing the battle. The assembly watched again as human weapons tore through Zitharon defenses. This is what humanity is capable of when we stop pretending. We have 47 fleets like the one you just watched. We have been building them in secret for 4 decades while you thought we were stumbling around learning basic spaceflight. Our technology is not borrowed from you. It is not adapted from galactic standard. It is uniquely human, designed by our military strategists to counter every advantage the elder species possess. Counselor Methera rose slowly. You have made your point, Ambassador. You have shown your strength. What happens now? Do you intend to conquer the galaxy? Sarah's expression softened slightly. No, Counselor. We intend to live in it. But we will live as equals, not as children begging for scraps from the table. The Zitharon Empire will surrender completely. Their military will be dismantled. They will pay reparations for Terra Nova. And this assembly will enforce it, because you now understand that failing to do so would be unwise. She let that sink in for a moment. We do not want to rule you. We do not want to destroy the galactic community. We simply want what we have always wanted, to be respected as equals, to have our concerns addressed with the same urgency you show each other, to live among the stars without fear that aggression against us will go unpunished. Velner's voice was quiet. You have certainly achieved that, Ambassador. The galaxy will never underestimate humanity again. Sarah nodded. Good. Then perhaps we can build something better than what existed before. A community where strength is measured not just in years lived or ships commanded, but in the willingness to stand for what is right. She turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. The families of those who died on Terra Nova deserve to know that their deaths were not meaningless, that they did not die simply because we were too weak to matter. Tell the galaxy what happened here today. Tell them that humanity mourned for our dead, and then we acted. And tell them that anyone who mistakes our kindness for weakness in the future will learn the same lesson the Zitharon learned today. Sarah walked out of the chamber. Behind her, the Galactic Assembly sat in stunned silence. Everything had changed. The young species that had spent 40 years smiling and apologizing had just demonstrated that they were potentially the most dangerous military power in the galaxy. And they had done it while maintaining that the only thing they wanted was to be treated fairly. It was, several counselors reflected, a very human approach to the problem. Overwhelming force applied with precision, followed by a request for reasonable terms. The galaxy would spend centuries trying to understand how one species could be simultaneously so violent and so committed to peace. On the Defiance, Admiral Marcus Webb received the news that the Zitharon government had surrendered unconditionally. All Zitharon military forces were ordered to stand down. The surviving leadership had agreed to every term humanity demanded. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Commander Park asked. Marcus looked at the planet below. Billions of Zitharon lived there. They had not attacked Terra Nova. They had not ordered the genocide. They were simply people living their lives under a government that had made a catastrophic mistake. "Begin relief operations," he said. "Get medical supplies and food to any areas damaged in the fighting. And send word to Earth. It is time to start rotating crews home. We have been in the dark long enough." Park nodded and began issuing orders. Around her, the bridge crew moved with purpose. They had done what they came to do. They had shown the galaxy that humanity was not to be trifled with. Now came the harder part, figuring out how to live in a galaxy that finally saw them clearly. Marcus stood and walked to the viewport. 40 years of pretending to be less than they were. 40 years of diplomatic smiles and strategic weakness. It had all been necessary, but it was also finally over. The galaxy would remember Terra Nova. They would remember the 11 minutes when humanity stopped asking for justice and simply took it. And perhaps Marcus thought that memory would prevent future tragedies. Perhaps other species would think twice before attacking humans, knowing that beneath the friendly exterior lay something ancient and unforgiving. Humanity had not wanted to be feared. They had wanted to be liked. But the galaxy had taught them that sometimes being feared was the only way to be safe. It was a sad lesson, but an important one. The stars looked the same as they always had. But humanity's place among them had changed forever. Did this story give you chills? Smash that like button and subscribe for more epic HFY stories, where humanity shows the galaxy what we're truly capable of. Share this with your friends who love military sci-fi. Drop a comment below. What do you think is humanity's greatest strength? Our patience or our fury when that patience runs out? Let us know what HFY story you want to see next.